I wake up alone. No, not alone. Never alone. He begs. He's right too. But this isn't me. And Venom isn't listening. Today on the Comic Book Report, Venom by Donny Cates and Ryan Stegman Omnibus. Stick around and check it out. Greetings everyone, my name is Dominic and today you're tuning in to the Comic Book Report, where we review comic books and graphic novels so you can get an idea of what to read. And today I've got another Marvel Omnibus for you, and I cannot wait to talk about Venom by Donny Cates and Ryan Stegman. This for me was a title that was very hyped in recent years, and I just missed this run. I did read and review The King in Black some time ago, but I had never read the proper Venom run. And now that I've had this omnibus, I've had the opportunity to, and I can't wait to talk about it more today. Before we do though, I just want to shout out our channel sponsor, OrganicPriceBooks.com. If you're looking to pick up your own comic book collected editions, I highly encourage you to check out their website. You can find a link for it in the description for this video, and if you find something you like, you can even use my discount code at checkout, TheComicBookReport, to receive $2 off of your order. Please note if you use my affiliate code or link to make a purchase, I will earn a small commission, but it's a fantastic way to support this channel. Thank you so much for considering. Now let's get started with today's Omnibus review. First, some quick facts about today's collection. The issues in this volume were primarily written by Donny Cates and illustrated by Ryan Stegman, Mark Bagley, Iban Coelho, and more. The comics in this volume were published by Marvel Comics beginning in 2018. The volume itself collects Venom, the 2018 series, issues 1 through 35, and Venom Annual Number 1, along with Web of Venom, Venom, Carnage Born, Wraith, Absolute Carnage, issues 1 through 5, King in Black, issues 1 through 5, and material from Free Comic Book Day 2019, Spider-Man Venom, Free Comic Book Day 2020, Spider-Man Venom, Incoming issue 1, and Carnage Black, White, and Blood issue 2. This is an oversized hardcover edition with glossy print paper stock, a sewn binding, and a total of 1,352 pages. At this time, I'd like to issue a general spoiler warning. I will be flipping through the contents of today's collection and commenting on plot points throughout. You've been advised. Okay, and here's our look at that standard edition omnibus cover for the Venom by Donny Cates and Ryan Stegman Omnibus. Really like this cover. I think the direct market cover is maybe even sharper. It has, I think, the issue cover for issue 1, which you saw during the quick facts portion of this video. The direct market cover looks nice, but the standard is really great. I love to see all the different Marvel heroes and some of the villains here showcased, and just Venom just kind of roaring. Really cool to see. Overall, really nice design work here. As far as the spine goes, we have that nice stylized font for the word Venom, which is always exciting. We have some of the creators listed on the spine, and then a nice face, tongue out shot of Venom on the lower spine. Overall, a pretty nice design. No real complaints from me here, other than I would have liked for them to call it a proper Venomnibus rather than Marvel Omnibus and that top logo on the spine, but still fun. Back cover has some great blurbs about the run, with pricing information, things it collects, and a fantastic picture of Knull, who is the main villain in this run, as I will speak to in a little bit here. Overall, this is designed really well. I like the dust jacket design. I think it really sells you on what you're getting here. I think the art you see on it is pretty indicative of what you can expect throughout the book, and I always like to say that when I'm reviewing a dust jacket. Very well done, Marvel. And speaking of dust jackets, I'm going to go ahead and showcase it one final time. This time I'll show you those interior flaps as well and spread out the dust jacket so you can see all of it at a glance one last time. Again, this is the standard edition. I believe the direct market has a different front cover and a different picture in the spine, so just be advised for collectors out there. After I showcase that dust jacket, I do want to just show the hardcover print we got on the hardback book itself under the dust jacket. It is one of the symbiote dragons that we see in this run. More on that, I'm sure, in a little bit as well. I think this was a really fun wraparound image to print on the book. It has a nice, like, 80s metal feel to it, I feel like. Really, really like it. I think you could have done so many art pieces, especially from Stegman, for this hardback image, but I don't think the symbiote dragon was a bad call. It looks really nice, and it's definitely a striking wraparound image for the hardcover book. So here it is all folded out, that wraparound, so you can see it again. Just another quick look before we transition, but yeah, really striking imagery here. Excellent work from Ryan Stegman. Okay, and next we're going to go ahead and transition to a quick look at the sewn binding on this omnibus. It is a proper sewn binding from all appearances, and I really enjoy it. Now, it is a big book, and there is a bit of gutter loss. I found myself sometimes pushing the pages out a bit to get it unfurled from the gutter. There are some times where text might dip in there a little bit, but it wasn't anything I couldn't see if I kind of pushed the pages open a bit more. No serious complaints from me. Okay, now it's time to jump into the book proper. We have some great title pages, publication information, a list of creators, which I always love to see. We have a fantastic introduction from Donny Cates that's a couple pages long here. You can really see in this introduction just how much Venom means to him as a person, as a creator, and that's something I felt resonate throughout this entire run, is just Cates' passion for this project. I should also note that I think that introduction is fairly safe to read before reading this book. Sometimes introductions have a bit of spoilers for the run. I felt like this one was pretty tame, and it really honestly set my expectation level for the rest of this book in a very positive way. After the introduction, we jump right into issue 1, and we are off to the races. This Venom run is unlike any other Venom comics run I have ever read personally. I am by no means an expert, but I've always been a fan of Venom since I first encountered him, and I think the Spider-Man animated series as a kid. I was not a comic book reader at the time back in the 90s, but I remember seeing this character, I think in the animated show first. Then I dabbled or kind of saw him in comics here and there. I was culturally aware of him, saw him appear in movies, things like that. But it was only when I really started to collect comics for myself in adulthood that I really got heavily invested in this character, really enjoyed the Todd McFarlane Spider-Man run, and so many other appearances of Venom after that. A really fantastic character. I know in recent decades he's been kind of portrayed more as an anti-hero, which I'm also all for, and that's certainly what we get here in this run. So if you like your Venom extremely dark and villainous, this is not really the book for you, but there are still a lot of terrifying symbiote-based villains, so have no fear. This run is very dark and edgy in its way, especially with some terrifyingly great artwork from Ryan Stegman. We have a couple other artists show up throughout this book as well. Mark Bagley is one of my favorites as well in this piece. This run is really fantastic though, and even with the kind of darker themes and imagery, we still have a lot of hope explored, a lot of really good core family values, friendship values, a real interesting kind of defining or playing around with the term of what it means to be heroic and choosing community and togetherness, and that was something I was not necessarily expecting out of a Venom Comics run. And I think this is where you can really see Cates' heart just shine through this run. It really just hits a lot of different chords at once in a really profound way, I felt like. I will say, and I said it at the beginning, that I actually read King in Black, which in many ways is the culmination of this entire Venom run. It's included toward the end of this omnibus, and it's mapped perfectly in my mind. And I will say, I enjoyed that comic event just a ton. I really enjoyed those 5 issues when I read it, kind of out of context of anything else. And I had so many people on YouTube comment, or just kind of in my personal life in different ways, talk to me about how can you have enjoyed this without reading the Venom Comics run? You have to read the run. It all leads up to it. I suppose it's in the same way that Jonathan Hickman's Secret Wars is kind of the culmination of his run on Avengers and some kind of even Fantastic Four. And I enjoyed that as well without reading the full run. But I understand that this is kind of the capstone at the end of the run, and now that I've read King in Black as it should have been read in context, it is even more of a triumph. I even enjoyed it more upon reread. But anyway, I set all that up to say I was only familiar with Donny Cates and Ryan Stegman's run on Venom from King in Black, those 5 issues, and I will say I was out of my depth. That was just the tip of the iceberg as far as I was concerned, because this run is amazing. Starting from Venom 1, I really felt like I had a grip on the Eddie Brock character. They made him much more nuanced, much more tragic, much more heroic in many ways throughout this run. You get to see kind of the highs and lows of Eddie Brock. You get to see him in different roles that you maybe have never seen him in before. The most notable, and again, some spoilers here, as a father. We're introduced to Dylan Brock, who at first is kind of sold as his much younger brother, only we eventually find out it's actually his son. It's Eddie Brock's son. And Eddie finds out about this and doesn't even want to tell Dylan because he's worried he's too much of a failure. But throughout this one, we really see him trying to step up to the plate as an incredible man, father, and hero. And honestly, by the end of this arc, I think you really earn a lot of the just character-defining moments for Eddie Brock, some of those heroic moments, those tender father-son moments. All of it feels so tremendously earned throughout the arc of this omnibus. But again, I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself here. To lay the groundwork, we find Eddie Brock at a really kind of dark crossroads in his life. He's on a lot of antipsychotics to basically suppress the Venom symbiote voice, his other, that's kind of invading his mind at all times. And he's just really not in a good place. And in the midst of this, we have his Venom symbiote kind of hypnotized or under the sway of what we find out to be Knull, the King in Black. This is the kind of creator, original symbiote guy who we find out the planet of the symbiotes is actually just a cage holding this monstrous creator of the symbiotes at bay. And we find out that he's kind of trying to invade the other symbiotes on Earth through this kind of hive mind to help get all the pieces of him back together to wake him up, basically, or pieces of the codex, which are these encoded symbiote. Anyway, it gets kind of complicated, but it really builds this lore, and essentially the first arc has to do with the fact that the symbiotes are all kind of an extension of this creator, the King in Black, Knull, and he's in this cage and he's trying to escape. And that's like really the whole arc of this entire run. The first arc has to do with this guy Rex, who was a symbiote super soldier in Vietnam, who is now kind of hanging on. He sort of refuses with the Venom symbiote, and Venom becomes a little bit more supercharged. We have a version of Venom here that has these giant dragon wings, which is just wild. And anyway, we have them stopping Knull's awakening in that first arc, but the feeling is that it's just kind of delayed. We also have a really fun meeting, I believe the first meeting between Venom and Miles Morales Spider-Man. That was really well done in my opinion. After this point, though, we kind of have this ticking clock narrative in the background at all times, at least I felt like, which was, hey, we know Knull, the King in Black, is the big bad. We know that he was stopped for now, but he's coming. He wants to wake up. He wants to break free of that planet of the symbiotes, and he wants to just completely take over Earth and completely cover existence in darkness again. And it's just really fascinating. We have some really cool lore building as well, not only with this background introduced into the symbiotes, but also with Knull. We have him, like the Necro Sword that Gore used in the Jason Aaron Thor run is kind of an extension of the symbiote, and we have all this stuff kind of weaving into the back of the Marvel Universe, paying off in the character of the King in Black. Anyway, after that first story arc, we have a couple others. We have some great like one-shots, like we have some flashbacks to Vietnam, a great story with Nick Fury and Wolverine that I thought was particularly cool, set during the Vietnam conflict. That was a really, really fun issue. We have another sequence of stories that kind of bring Eddie to different stages. Like I said, the introduction of Dylan Brock, his thought-to-be brother, then eventually son. We also have the reintroduction of Cletus Cassidy's Carnage. He gets basically resurrected in this run, and it all leads up into the first big event in this omnibus, which is Absolute Carnage. That 5-issue event is all included in here, as well as that 5-issue King in Black story, and I had never read Absolute Carnage before. I think Carnage is another great Spider-Man villain, but frankly, he freaks me out. I know I reviewed the introduction of that character, but he is such a terrifying villain to me that I actually think he's a better Venom villain than Spider-Man villain either, just because he is so grimdark. And the fact that this guy gets resurrected and he's basically trying to get more empowered symbiotes to try to wake up Knull and throw existence into the void. I just think that that's so in line with what Cletus Cassidy would do, what Carnage would do, and it's just so terrifying. And ultimately, Absolute Carnage culminates in this way where we get to see Eddie Brock playing hero again, but he, in the climax of that, decides to save his son rather than all of humanity. So he basically gets his son back, but in doing so, he sort of inadvertently awakens Knull, breaks him out of the cage. So now we know the timer is really on, and we're just waiting for the end. And this is all on Eddie Brock's shoulders. For a while, he doesn't tell anyone that the world as we know it will end soon, and he's unleashed this great threat to try to save his son. Throughout this, we also have the presence of the character The Maker. For those that don't know, this is the Ultimate Universe Reed Richards. He's younger, he's disfigured himself, and he's become a villain. And his inclusion in this omnibus is pretty pervasive. He shows up off and on throughout this entire run, and I think it's done really effectively. I think this character is super fascinating, and the way he teams up with Eddie Brock and is adversarial with Eddie Brock and is just kind of this mystery factor, I just think really works. He's a super scientist that we know is just trying to get back to the ultimate universe, and he's trying to do that by basically experimenting with symbiotes and breaking a hole in his reality to get to his own, or breaking a hole in this universe to get to his own and kind of restart it. So his schemes are kind of going off and on throughout all of it, but it's kind of this cool science fiction heavy subplot throughout many of the stories. Really an effective use of the Maker in my mind. I mentioned this earlier, another part of the symbiote lore that's explored upon is this idea of the codex, that every time a symbiote has a host, it kind of imprints a memory of it. Because of that, we have appearances by Agent Venom, the kind of Flash Thompson venomized super soldier who was passed away before this run. It was a great way to roll in that character. We also have Matt Gargan, who was one of the kind of Dark Avengers Venom at one point. We have him show up and get really brutalized in this run as well. So there's a lot of really good kind of cameos, Easter eggs, pop-ups for a lot of Venom's historical basis. During some of the events too, we also have Spider-Man, Peter Parker show up a couple times, which I really liked. At this point, Peter Parker and Eddie Brock are basically friends, and I really like that dynamic. You could tell there's so much history between these characters that it just kind of worked for me. We also have a story arc in here. I'm going to be jumping around a little bit now, but we have a story arc in here where Venom goes back to the island where he kind of disappeared to after he thought he destroyed Spider-Man, and we find this whole kind of history of that island. We have Venom kind of fighting off Carnage, who is still sort of grafted into his symbiote after the events of Absolute Carnage. This was a really cool wrinkle, I thought. I know a lot of people were down on the Venom Island storyline, but I actually thought it was better than I had heard. Some really beautiful artwork as well in this story arc, and I just really liked it. Throughout this book, we have a couple one-shots as well. We have like Incoming, we have the Carnage Red, White, and Blood material at the end, and we have a couple things like the Venom special, a couple things throughout it, the Web of Venom stuff. I just think it was really cool to have a couple of these one-shots mapped throughout the run as well. It really mixed up the reading in a way that just felt fresh and entertaining to me, and the storylines were gripping. Switching over to the art for a second, I do absolutely love the art from Ryan Stegman. I was not familiar with this artist before this book, other than King in Black, of course, and I am just blown away. I think the way that we get so much visceral grit and just beauty in his artwork is just astounding. I think the character models themselves are a bit animated, which is surprising because I think that he still finds a way to make it feel very organic and just gritty, and I don't know how he's able to do those things while it also looks kind of animated, but wow, it just works. There's something really cinematic about this art style as well that is hard to put my finger on, but it's just epic in scope. Back to the plot-wise, too, there are a couple other instances I wanted to talk about, including things like they have the War of the Realms tie-in issues of Venom, where Venom, at this point, is depowered, doesn't have a symbiote, and he basically gets sort of an Asgardian-powered Venom costume, kind of. This was a really fun couple issues as well. But anyway, I'm jumping around a little bit, but there were some really great stories here, but everything all feeds to that central Knull is coming dynamic, and I just think it pays off ultimately with the King in Black and all the tie-in issues of Venom throughout King in Black, and how that's kind of interlaced is there'll be an issue of King in Black, an issue of Venom, an issue of King in Black, an issue of Venom. And I think that that's surprising because I read the 5 issues of King in Black and thought it read really cohesively, but when you read it like this, mapped how it probably should have been, we kind of go into these other moments that fill out the story of King in Black even more. And I'm sure if you have the omnibus and you read all of the tie-ins, it's even more filled out. But I think what we got in this omnibus is more than sufficient for me. Before I go further into King in Black, I realize there's another huge storyline I kind of overlooked that I'm flipping through that I liked. We have a whole sequence of stories where basically Venom, Eddie Brock, and Dylan Brock, and the Maker all enter into this other universe. This alternate universe where basically symbiotes have completely taken over the world. There's like symbiote venomized Avengers. The entire world's taken over by this new King in Black, who in this world we find out is actually Dylan Brock. In this alternate universe, we actually have Eddie Brock's paramour, Dylan's mother, as the Agent Venom figure. We have characters like Deadpool and Spider-Man and even Cletus Cassidy's Carnage on this kind of anti-King in Black force. And this world is just basically, it's completely run by the King in Black and all of these symbiotes, and there's this ragtag group of people that are like freedom fighters trying to topple him. And it's looked pretty hopeless, and of course in comes Eddie Brock and Dylan, and this is a really fun story arc as well. We also have this character known as Virus, who's coming around trying to hunt down Eddie Brock and everything. Anyway, this is a story arc that kind of took it in a weird direction. I felt like this was maybe 3/4 or so the way through the run, is basically leading into King in Black, and I felt like it was a bit of a diversion. I guess we got the stakes of the King in Black because we got to see a world that was taken over by a King in Black, even if it was Dylan rather than Knull. But it felt, again, kind of like distractionary, but I still really liked it. It was a cool parallel universe situation. There's definitely a little bit of a time jump we have after this point. But it all worked really well. I think this really grew the relationship between Eddie Brock and Dylan, and I really got a more feel for these characters. And overall, I think I liked it. I think that this all really worked well, but by the time they returned to the main Marvel Universe, 616, they basically returned and the stars are gone because the King in Black has arrived. And this jumps right into that main story, as I was saying earlier with King in Black. So that was the last kind of lap before we get to the straight-up King in Black event and all the Venom issues that tie into that. And after that point, we just have like an issue or so of Venom and a really quick little like couple pages of that Carnage Black, White, and Blood issue. So everything basically culminates with King in Black. You know, the last issue of Venom, I would say, serves as an epilogue, and it's more of a bridge jumping into Al Ewing's run on Venom, kind of setting up the status quo at the last issue of that before kicking off with Al Ewing's run. So in many ways, issue 35, which I'll talk about in a little bit, it feels more like a bridge issue. Everything culminates, though, really in King in Black. And so after they return from this universe, they basically find that Knull has arrived. And it's kind of, you know, all hands on deck, batten down the hatches because he's here. And he goes on a rampage. I mean, he sends in all these symbiote dragons. All these people are starting to get venomized. And people are scrambling, not knowing what to do. We have Ryan Stegman's artwork just look like it's some of the best in the series in my mind. It's absolutely gripping and beautiful. And the stage is set. From moment one in the first issue, once we figure out what the main conflict is with this guy Knull, you knew it was coming, and King in Black is the ultimate culmination and payoff of everything we've read in these entire, 1,300 pages at this point, it felt like, and honestly, it really paid off. Knull is so hardcore and just starts decimating New York, taking over the world, and Eddie Brock is very soon ripped away from Venom, and is kind of out of commission. He's thrown, he's basically killed, put into a coma, and from there, we have the Venom issues that tie into King in Black, and we have him kind of going into the symbiote hive mind and trying to sneak around Knull while he's sort of in this coma state. He interacts with the Codex kind of life imprint of Flash Thompson, Agent Venom, and Rex from that first story arc. Throughout this, we kind of have this weird side quest where Eddie's basically trying to help the real world from this kind of symbiote hive mind, and he not only finds a way to basically help Flash Thompson resurrect himself in the real world as Agent Venom, or Agent Anti-Venom, not really sure how that works. Not only is he doing that, he also basically gets imbued with the powers of the Captain Universe, which if you don't know, that kind of like crazy power force that every so often chooses like an avatar in the Marvel Universe, this is another piece of lore building where basically Donny Cates suggests that this power is actually the anti-Knull, like the King in Light, basically, instead of the King in Black is what this Captain of the Universe power is. And we have Eddie Brock, after he's basically dying, he basically gets imbued with this celestial kind of force, and he chooses as his costume, as his avatar presence as Captain of the Universe, to basically be Venom. And so it's light versus dark, it's Venom versus Knull, and it comes at just the right time because so many of Earth's heroes are getting totally wiped out, destroyed. We have the Sentry ripped in half. We have just so many bodies, and just it's really bleak. While all this stuff is happening with Eddie, we even have the Silver Surfer show up. We have Thor show up. We have some heavy hitters who have some history with Knull trying to stop him, and we now have the Captain Universe version of Eddie Brock. He shows up, grabs the Silver Surfer's surfboard, grabs Mjolnir, Thor's hammer, fuses them together into this gigantic crazy axe, and we have this final epic battle with Knull. And ultimately Eddie does save the day, and before he does, or as he does, he ultimately absorbs the symbiote hive mind, and he becomes the new King in Black. So the day is saved, but now Eddie has these unbelievable powers, and even though he sacrifices the kind of Captain of the Universe avatar powers, he still has the entire collective power of all the symbiotes in existence now as the new King in Black. And that really leads us into that issue 35 of Venom, where we have kind of what happened after the events of King in Black. And we have him kind of omnipresent in a way. He can be sort of everywhere in the universe the symbiotes are at once. He has this kind of hive consciousness now, and he's saving the world, he's saving the universe all at the same time. And it's made him a bit distracted as he's trying to be everywhere to everyone all at once. And we find that unlike Knull, it's actually draining his human mortal body more than he would have expected. So now Eddie Brock looks like an old man, and we have him distracted at all times. We have Dylan feeling a bit estranged from his father after that heroic victory because he's so distracted being the King in Black. And we have Dylan basically taking on the Venom symbiote and becoming an all-new Venom himself. And so this is the status quo that kind of culminates with this run, and it bridges the gap into what I assume is the Al Ewing era following this Donny Cates Ryan Stegman time. I haven't read any of that run yet. If you have, I'd love to hear about it in the comments below, but narratively, that is kind of a broad overview of what you can expect from this omnibus. There are some stories I didn't quite cover, and it obviously is much deeper and more nuanced than I'm even selling here, but I wanted to give you kind of a synopsis of most of what this thing included because, wow, it really packs a punch. As you can see, after all that, we have a few extras at the back of this omnibus. I'll admit, I was hoping for even more extras because this has become one of my favorite Marvel runs of all time, but we still get a good handful of extras here. We have some production images. Some of my favorite extras are actually every issue of Venom up till, I think, 200 or 300, whatever the anniversary is here. Seeing all the thumbnailed issues, very cool way to round out this book. And that's the Donny Cates Ryan Stegman Venom Omnibus. Now all that's left is to give this a grade. Without a doubt, for some of the most incredible storytelling I've read in a Marvel Comics run in some time, that not only honors the old traditions of this title, but expands the lore in meaningful ways, coupled with just the most jaw-dropping artwork I've seen in some time, The Comic Book Report is happy to give Venom by Donny Cates and Ryan Stegman Omnibus an A. Yes, this is a must-read Marvel title for me. I thought it was excellent from start to finish, from soup to nuts. This really lived up to all the hype I had ever heard about it and more. Really just grounded character-driven storytelling, and it's something I will never really forget. Really enjoyed this run, and it made me so eager to check out more from these creators. But maybe I missed the mark, or maybe you have a difference of opinion. I would love to hear from you too in the comments. But I think that's going to do it today for the Comic Book Report. Please don't forget to leave your like, that comment we talked about, and maybe share this video with a friend. Until next time, have a good one.